Beautiful. Good morning, everybody. Warm welcome to another episode of Froggeek's Green Tech Talks. Today, it's my great pleasure again to welcome Mr. Johan Gielis here with us, an expert, a legend in the bamboo research community, and also an inventor, a scientist. If I can share, I'm always so fascinated. You see the book in my bag, Inventing the Circle by Johan Gielis, highly recommended. Again, brings really the fascination of or by nature closer to the things, to the more pragmatic or more regular things that we kind of deal with in terms of sustainable building and living. Now today we have a talk about bamboo and the application for energy, and this is why it's a great pleasure to welcome Johan here with us to kind of share some of his perspective on that. Thank you, Johan, for taking the time.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. So maybe on the book, just one small remark. So we have, for the very small, we have quantum mechanics, and for the very large, we have relativity theory. But we don't have a decent mathematical theory for everything that we observe around us. And that's the goal of my work, to have this, and then later combine the rest all in one framework. So a bit ambitious, but let's see. And this door was opened by my study in bamboo. So bamboo is the gateway to understanding the world and the universe.
It's very special. It's a very special plant, and now we kind of experience a boom in this field. Yeah. I mean, we have numerous partners. There are many projects that are happening in Europe, all over the place. So, we also go one by one the application, and also try to share awareness on what are the most beneficial applications of bamboo, what are the most efficient ones, the most meaningful one as well. And, energy is always a thing that comes up. I mean, especially, in winter, when you have pellets, etc., you look for fast alternatives. You look for things, how to do them. So this was where the idea of bamboo and energy came in. Now, I would really like to kind of, invite you to share your perspective and also your experience from the wealth of research in this field. How does bamboo compare as a biomass source for energy production? What is your take on that?
Well, basically, let's say the energetic value is pretty much comparable to wood. Huh? So whether you burn wood or you burn bamboo, the calorific value is pretty much the same. So, but the experience we had was basically in Bamboo for Europe. So I told this in the Bamboo Expo last year. So Bamboo for Europe was designed to see if we can use bamboo in the framework of Europe. So not to adapt Europe to bamboo, but adapt bamboo to Europe, where we can use it and where are the weak links, going from the production of bamboo to the planting and harvesting of bamboo, all the way down to, let's say, the valorization of bamboo. So we had two major research lines in the second part, which is one, the wood industry, medium density fiber boards and so on and so forth, but also bioenergy. So bioenergy, you could compare that because we have a lot of interest in biomass, not only leftover biomass, but also biomass from what is called short rotation copies. That means, for example, say willow trees. Willow trees that are cut every year or every 2 years and then used to make pallets or used to burn stuff. And we had some pretty good results there. First of all, we planted bamboo in open fields, which was never done, to see how it grows and performs. And we estimated after several researches with the Center for Bioenergy in Portugal and with the Center for Bioenergy in Belgium, in Gembloux, University of Gembloux, to do several experiments, not only on the growth, but also on the mechanical harvesting. Because if you want to do it in Europe, you have to harvest mechanically, not comb by comb with a machete or so. And then the advantage was that you could really harvest on a sustainable basis. We estimated for certain species 10 tons dry biomass per hectare per year. And then it could be turned into energy. Energy either in pellets or in gasification, or in bioethanol, which we did not do, but they have a lot of expertise in bioethanol in Brazil,
Mhm.
to turn it into charcoal and carbonization and so on. So there are various possibilities. But what is important to understand is that bamboo, when you harvest it, it has a certain percentage of water in it. So, and it depends on the season. It depends on the let's say the species, but it could go from 40 to 70% of water in a culm. But for young culms, it could even be much higher than 100%. So you say you have 100 grams of biomass, and
Mhm.
in the same part could be 130 grams of water.
Mhm.
So it's huge. The whole thing would weigh 230 grams, and that's a bit of a problem, because if you harvest mechanically, part of it will contain much water. So you need to dry it, and that there was a bit of a problem with that, in the sense that wood chips tend to be have less water than bamboo. So in going into a continuous way of making energy out of bamboo, you have to take into account this higher, you know, this higher amount of water. So there
Mhm.
were several tests that we done, also pyrolysis, making oils of it and charcoal of it.
Mhm.
Uh, and anyway, that's the background. But as you say, there's a lot of bamboo sprouting all over the world. So there's a lot of in Africa, in Central America, but also in China and India. But there are huge differences, in the sense that in the only really successful scale up thing has been done in India, in China, because they started there more than 40 years ago to build a real big hub, and all the material that is harvested there basically goes into, or most of it goes into, really high value added materials like composite boards and so on and so on. So
Mhm.
Mozo in the Netherlands is one example, and Pablo van der Lucht will also speak at the Dortmund conference about these things. That brings us to the other thing. Why would you burn bamboo?
Mhm.
Yeah, well, it's not a smart thing to do unless you can use it. Because why would you not turn bamboo first in a high value added product
Mhm.
and later burn it? One remark I also want to make here is that we think if we put bamboo into some boards for buildings and so on, that we store carbon. But it's important to understand that carbon, if you release CO2 by burning it, it stays CO2. Very complicated, but most of the CO2 stays for hundreds of years in the atmosphere. So suppose we burn it now. We harvest bamboo on year zero, and we harvest it, and we put the CO2 back in the air. It's net zero,
Mhm.
but that CO2 will stay there. But if we put it into board materials, and it's a short rotation furniture, for example, the IKEA type, then it's burned after 10 years anyway. For buildings, it could be burned after 50 years. But even then, it's a temporary storage. But eventually, it will get burned or be decomposed, and yeah, eventually the CO2 will end up again in the atmosphere and will stay there for hundreds of years. So it's a temporary storage. It's not like a permanent solution.
Mhm.
That's an important remark. So then, in this sense, it does not really matter whether you burn it or whether you put it into boards, but it's just a temporary extension of your time you capture CO2. It will be released anyway. So another important aspect, because everybody talks about bamboo as sustainable.
Mhm.
Yes, but if you plant bamboo and you have, let's say, after 8 or 9 years, you have reached the maximum potential of carbon capture. If you don't manage the plantation afterwards, natural forest, for example, then let's say individual culms will start to decay after depending on the species, between 6 and 9 years, which means that this carbon is also going back up in the air.
Mm.
So there will be new shoots that take up carbon, and there will be old shoots that decay again. So after 9 years, nothing. So you really to have a carbon storage potential, you need to continue managing the plantation and taking material out. These are all some considerations that are not often taken into account, but are very important in the sense. Well, there's a lot of this carbon capture idea and so on, but there
Mm.
are some questions to be made also with carbon credits and so on. Let's see. But anyway, so as another part, as I mentioned on the LinkedIn page,
Mhm.
the increased CO2, which we know already from 50 years in greenhouses,
Mhm.
increases plant growth anyway. So plants make a better use of CO2, even in drier conditions. So we know now that the earth is actually greening, especially now, before in China, India, and now also in Europe. So things are happening that are generally not considered in these stories about sustainability and carbon capture. So these are some remarks that I think are important to understand.
I see. I see. I absolutely got you. And yes, definitely. And it's also important to have this transdisciplinary discussions with people
Mhm.
like yourself to kind of share another perspective or add another piece
Yeah,
into the whole complex situation in which we are. And as you say, it's not only black and white. Of course, there are also maybe some basics that we need to kind of clarify or improve how we do things, how we manage our resources.
yeah,
But there are also aspects which are natural parts of the cycle in the system
yeah.
Earth, which is changing, which is not like
Which
staying.
is has always been changing. Has always been changing. And let's say sorry to maybe people would not like to hear this because
Mhm.
actually we were at an all-time low at CO2. Yeah? So
Mm.
now with more CO2 in the air, the plants will thrive better anyway. Let's see where this will get us. Uh,
Yes.
Even at
I,
an
I, uh, I yeah, yeah, please. I have also
even
read
at an the paper I referred to on LinkedIn really looks at accelerations, not only uh, even speeding up with the greening. No? And CO2 is the major driver for that. Anyway, so back to this is a general picture how I see it. I'm a scientist and I like the real numbers, and I'm a bit skeptical also. for,
and that's also needed. That's also well needed, and I really appreciate it. And I think it kind of bridged very nicely to our next part of the discussion, which at FrogGeeks, for everybody, we talk always about sustainability and the complex systems, and whatever you have. So we really like this kind of rich and diverse discussion where it's not sometimes so simple, but we need to look for ways how to cooperate, how to bring things together.
Yeah,
And what many times go back. I already said it in this one-to-one exchange which we had. Was your presentation also from last year from the Bamboo Expo? Of course, for those of you that do not know, there is a Bamboo Expo happening in May. So I think there are still early bird tickets available till 31st of March. So please be more than welcome to kind of leverage that.
yeah,
And for sure, go there and see Johan's presentation. I bet it's going to be amazing as always. So, and in your presentation last year, you were talking about, the sustainability effects or elements. You also kind of touched upon that right now. What are is the cultivation of bamboo for energy actually? I mean, now you mentioned it also, it's maybe not such a smart idea or the best
well,
application of the resource. And in your presentation, you were talking about how much water is needed to build up bamboo biomass or to grow
yeah,
bamboo biomass.
yeah.
So could you tell us maybe more about that?
Yeah, that was an experiment that was done by one of the partners in Germany. So, how much water is really needed to build, let's say, 1 kilogram of dry biomass? And you always have to take into account dry biomass. So, because sometimes they measure in metric tons per hectare or something, you really have to look at the dry biomass because this gives you the energy content of bamboo. So the water inside does not help increasing the energy content at all. So the water use efficiency was measured. So we grew plants at several, let's say, water potentials of the soil: the dry soil, medium soil, and a wet soil. Yeah?
Mm.
And so there was there was fertilization given, but it was a really controlled experiment, and it was found that bamboo uses approximately, on the average, 300 to 400 liter per kilogram of biomass. Now you may say that's a lot, but it's only half of many crops that we grow in Europe.
Mm.
So not corn or maize, because that's a very efficient water uses, but many other crops just use a lot more water to build 1 kg of biomass. So what my dream would be to continue this research, because it's very important, because what we see, even with an increased CO2, you might have parts that are greening but are getting drier. Yeah? So it's very important to understand that yeah, bamboos will thrive very well, even in conditions of drought, as long as they have enough water in the growing season, when the
In the
young
growing
shoots grow. And that's maybe 1 or 2 months only. Huh? And after that, they start lignifying and so on and so forth. So this water use efficiency is one of the most important things that we have to take into account. But on the other hand,
Mm.
it has been shown that many plants adapt to drought by having less stomata. And the stomata are the, let's say, in on the leaf there are many stomata which make sure that the exchange of water going out and the influx of CO2, carbon dioxide, is taken up. And in drier conditions, they tend to have less stomata, which makes plants more efficient, even in drier conditions, to take up CO2, convert it into sugars. So I haven't seen a study yet for bamboo. Maybe for grasses, I'll look it up.
Mhm.
But water use efficiency is in the absence of, or the fights for water that we'll be seeing in the next century, will be increasingly important. So bamboo is on the top of my list as a kind of renewable resource,
Mhm.
tackling capturing a good material for many uses, but also highly efficient in terms of water use. So that's very important. So.
Pretty interesting, pretty interesting. And so regarding the economic benefits of growing bamboo, I mean, do you see any like difference between using it for energy or building as a construction element?
So for building, you can have, let's say, the highest value would be if you grow 2 bamboos in a pot, and you could extract pharmaceuticals from it. Huh? There are possibilities to do that, and we have done research ourselves on, let's say, not my, another doctoral student in the pharmaceutical department of the University of Ghent, looking
Mm.
at tumor effects from certain bamboo extracts. A second thing, if you grow 100 bamboos, you can make tea out of it. High level, small area, high added value. And then next comes the things for building. So walls constitute reconstructed materials, oriented strand boards, and so on and so forth. So and only at the end is energy. People pay less unless you are using charcoal. So there's a lot of interest now in getting this charcoal, right, for amelioration of soils, like the
Mm.
terra nigra.
Mhm.
So, but I don't have too much information on this, but it's people are willing to pay like 800 euros per ton for material to ameliorate the soil. So bamboo charcoal has an amazing surface area, something on the average of 900 square meters per gram of materials. A piece of charcoal is an amazing, so they can absorb a lot of carbon and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
Uh, the I see a question coming up. Activated
Yes,
charcoal, so
yes,
that
yes.
you can use the straightforward use would be purifying water. No? So activated charcoal is also used, for example, to if you're poisoned, you take it up. as a pill. But it already in the 80s, people started using activated charcoal to purify air, purify soil, for example. So you stream water through it, and then the activated charcoal takes up. But now it's being used to remediate the soil. People are paying lots of money for it. But as you say, if you want to turn a bamboo biomass into 1 ton of charcoal, you need a lot of biomass. It's somewhere between 5 and 10 tons of fresh biomass, dry biomass. So if you keep it drying in the sun, it would say the moisture content will go down to 10 to 15%, which should do for all these applications. So, but then a number of applications would be, for example, there's a long tradition already in Brazil to use bamboo to produce bioethanol, to mix it with fossil fuels to drive cars and trucks and so on. Bioethanol is one, and then the whole range from pellets to charcoal is possible with bamboo, just like it is with wood. Would be a substitute for wood. It would be something we already considered in the Bamboo for Europe project. That's more than 25 years ago. But what was important is that many wood companies making boards had to go all the way to the south of France to get enough biomass material with lots of transport costs and so on. So if we could grow bamboo locally and then deliver it to the companies, then it would save on costs and harvest. You could chip it right away and so on. So there were quite a number of advantages of using. Whether you can whatever you can do with biomass for energy, you can also do it with bamboo. It's important to know whether you want to make bioethanol or charcoal or pyrolysis out of it. It's all possible. So add the sustainability, add the water use efficiency, add carbon credits and so on. That's true. So.
And I mean, I absolutely can echo that. I mean, this biochar topic, it's amazing because it's really something that we kind of seem to rediscover again, like all these great Asian tools that we had. I call it Asian, but it's really like natural resource. And I mean, this application which you mentioned, soil remediation, human health, animal health, amazing distribution as well, pretty much growing. So for Sunil, for you, if you have opportunities, we see, I mean, our colleague Fred Hornaday, Fred, if you're watching this, hello. Or if you see it in the replay, just drop a comment.
Fred is a major voice in this biochar story. And also, I met Everest Holmes last year.
Oh, yes, of course, Everest. Yeah.
I hope I will meet him again this year.
Hopefully. I mean, we need to do something maybe with him as well, because, the point why I mentioned Fred is because he's really looking at the element of biochar, yes, but from waste, bamboo waste, and then how it's processed. And you mentioned it also yourself that there is a certain volume of the biomass needed. So, pretty interesting point on that as well.
Yeah, maybe one thing I think it's important, you have to determine locally how you are going to use it. If you're going to, say, 25 hectares of bamboo and you want to do better because we can harvest more biomass than in short rotation coppice willow, then bamboo could be a viable source for, say, renewable biomass energy to make electricity run. That's always possible. But in other cases, for example, if you're in a hilly country where it's very difficult to harvest the bamboo and transport it, so you could locally make biochar and transport that rather than transporting all the materials to a factory to process it into boards or so. So it really depends on the local conditions, and it also depends on the way you process. If you want to make charcoal, there's many possibilities. There's many of types of open kilns, even open fire, but that puts quite a lot of small particles in the air, particulate matter as well. So now we have some examples. A friend of mine has developed, let's say, a kind of machine. So it's like a cylinder, and you put bamboo combs in there. It's in use in Benin in Africa now.
Mhm.
And it takes like a 4 or 5 hour cycle to burn everything into charcoal with an amazing ratio of 1 to 4, which normally in an open kilns it would be 1 to 10 or so. So 10 tons to get to 1 ton. So these efficiency measures are very important. So, and in this case, for example, in Benin, people just harvest out in the woods, and they cut everything they can to make charcoal. So this would be a kind of a very efficient way of saving the forest there by having bamboo plantations and charcoal. But in this case, it's only for charcoal, because typically you could have cogeneration of gas and so on while
Mhm.
burning this charcoal product and gas another product. But in this case, all the syngas that is produced from the bamboo is used to continue fire the kettle. There's no electronics involved. There's absolutely. So it's there are developments in this kind of ways of burning and making the materials, which are also important to
Mhm.
reduce particulate matter, to reduce CO2 release, and so on and so forth. Also, charcoal could be used in a variety of ways. Not only for health or purifying water or ameliorating the soil, probably also for carbon capture or other applications. Yeah, I see Balcoa bamboo ready for projects. There are yeah, no, but there are popping up.
Mhm.
Bamboo plantations are popping up all over the world. But I think before I mentioned this supply chain from China with Moso and pubescens edulis, Philostachys, but they have a steady supply of, and they harvest easily over 10 tons. But if you look at the figures of India, for example, where it's more in homesteads and so on,
Mhm.
according to recent figures from India, the yields will be much lower for various reasons. So even if there are lots of bamboo plantations out there, and what is missing in this whole supply chain is farmers want to sell it, but they don't find anyone to buy it. And on the other hand, there are producers trying to figure out what we can do. Let's say factories trying to figure out, can we do something with bamboo? But maybe some material will always be cheaper. So some rest materials. So it's a big battle. So producers and farmers having 20 hectares up to 500 hectares of bamboo, and uh, they don't have a, and that's what worked in China.
Mhm.
China has Moso, and they have a lot of production going to the Netherlands, for example.
Mhm. I find this point, which you say, super interesting, because I mean that's indeed a situation we kind of need to find each other and in the network now. I mean, how does it match? You mentioned China started like 40 years ago. They have now the capacity. They have now the buyers, and it's expanding. It's growing.
Yeah,
But for this, I believe also for Indian based or for the other countries that are starting, that are in other maybe areas from other continents. Basically, it's also this combination of agroforestry, carbon credits,
yeah,
etc., to make it viable before you start earning money with the resource itself, using it for construction or whatever higher value added would be the purpose.
yeah. And actually, yeah, in Dortmund, I will
Mm.
be one of the keynote speakers this year, and my title is very clear: bamboo is a fantastic, not a miracle plant. Yeah, so I've seen in the past so many people 200 tons per hectare, 150 tons per hectare per year. This is not possible at all. So with no plant at all.
Mm.
Uh, so something reasonable would be somewhere between 10 and even 30 tons per hectare would be very, very good. But then you have to manage it, and you can only manage it and put money into it for managing it when you have the supply chain taking away the materials. And that's a big problem for many producers.
Yes, but the kind of encouraging thing is there is many tools being developed, and the network it's like vibrant. You see how people are kind of coming with ideas,
Yeah.
and there is also something very interesting happening in this sense. But maybe it's a little bit too early, so I don't want to say too much. But let's see, because this matching and finding each other and kind of synchronizing, I think that's something still that we need to kind of where which we need to go, the way which we need to go, and we are not yet there. We're just getting ready.
No, absolutely not. And I've been my first development was plant biotechnology, producing
Mhm.
plants by tissue culture. I talked about this last year as well. But what happened in the 60s and 70s when this method came up, before every grower had some ficus benjamina plants, fig plants, and could take cuttings and make its own, so end plant. So the whole chain was in one company. And then it was breaking up in tissue culture lab, young plant producers, and then the liner producers, and then the end product. So it was all broken up and in competition against each other. So we should go back to a completely integrated chain, where the producers get the, let's say, the farmers do get the right amount of money for their costs. What's happening now is that we see what's happening now with all the farmers in Europe, but
Mm.
bamboo is a multi-cash crop in my perspective. So you could agroforestry is one example, but you could sell it to different end users. Even paper or let's say cotton replacing fibers for clothing and so on. So
Mm.
many possibilities. Fantastic plant, but not a miracle plant. Let's put it this way. So
But
we have to build on real data, real measurements, not expectations or hopes.
our hopes. I love that. I really love that. And yeah, thank you so much for being with us. We have like a few minutes left, 2 minutes left. So let's take one last question
Yeah.
for you, which would be: are there any regulatory limitations or policy considerations for people, maybe within Europe, because you're heavily in Europe, but maybe also in other regions, that you would like to comment on, to consider, to be aware, to kind of, manage or work with? And what would be your like final message for the bamboo loving community, or bamboo
Well,
lovers
I
community?
have, yeah, I have a bit of Europe is making it more and more difficult for outside producers to export to Europe, huh? For various reasons. We have these ESG regulations and so on, all these regulations that people have to adhere to. So I was thinking Europe is building walls, huh, to keep refugees out. It's building walls to keep the Russians out in Finland. But from another perspective, Europe is encapsulating itself. Huh? So, and that's
Mhm.
not good, not good, isolating itself. So we should be more open to international trade, and align the supply chain from countries in South America, Africa, and so on, to align it with our needs, huh? But less regulations. But unfortunately, in Europe, we're all about regulations of all kinds,
Mm.
uh, for good reason and for good measure in many cases. But it's also, in some sense, much protectionistic. Huh?
Mm.
So
Let's see where the future takes us. But I love really the bottom line of your book, which is like all these many different shapes
yeah.
coming from one single point, and
Yeah.
kind of developing in the many
The
shapes.
point we have to unify again. The world has diversified so much, and yeah, there are hundreds of scientific conferences of people not understanding one another from another field and so on. So we should go back to the basics of science, go back to numbers, go back to measurements, go back to and so on. Without all the hassle and without all the middlemen taking up money and not paying the farmers what they ought to be paid.
Mm.
So,
Oh yes, oh yes. Well explained, sir. This is how Sunil is wrapping this up. So thank you so much
Yeah,
for this.
you're
I
welcome.
think a great message in the end. Johan?
You're welcome. So, yeah, that's my take on bamboo in general. It's been fantastic, not a miracle plant. So good.
Great. Great. Thank you so much for sharing awareness, having you again in. And I love to see you all on the next ProGeeks Green Tech Talk and hopefully see you soon, Johan.
Okay, bye.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
everyone. Thanks for listening in.
Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.